The port of Santos wakes up before the city, the metallic sound of the moorings, the cranes cutting across the horizon. At dawn, ships wait for the right window. Trucks compete for access. Trains line up in silence, loaded to the limit. Here, every meter counts. And when one of the largest ports in Latin America starts operating at the limit of its own territory, the question is no longer, how much does it grow? And becomes where to grow? It's at this point that an unprecedented decision arises to expand the project not with immediate concrete, but with territorial planning. An expansion of 12.6 kilometers that will redraw the port map of the Baixada Santista. It's not a project that's visible overnight. It's a silent, more structural change that defines the port for the coming decades. Stay with us for the next few minutes and understand how this expansion redefines logistics, urban planning, and the future of Brazil's largest port. The Port of Santos is located in the estuary of Baixada Santista, spread between the shores of Santos and Guarujá. With direct influence over Cubatão and São Vicente, over the decades, the port has grown in an integrated way with the urban network, sharing space with industrial areas, main roads, and established neighborhoods. This has made the territory a critical factor for its operation. Currently, the active polygonal area of the organized port covers about 7.8 million square meters, including land and water areas, under the management of the Port Authority. The expansion proposal increases this number to approximately 20.4 million square meters, with the incorporation of 12.6 million square meters distributed across municipalities in the metropolitan region of Baixada Santista. These additional areas include logistics backyards, already occupied industrial zones, and strategic spaces that have not yet been explored. With this, it will be possible to reorganize flows, plan new access points, and distribute operations in a way that is more compatible with the urban and logistical reality of Baixada Santista. More than just increasing the size of the port, the new polygon redefines legal boundaries and creates the foundation to update the development and zoning plan. In fact, it is precisely this need for reaffirmation and replanning that explains why the Port of Santos has reached this decisive point. Over the past few years, the Port of Santos has been operating at a pace higher than what was anticipated by its own planning instruments. According to data from the federal government, the facility closed 2025 with a new historical record for cargo handling, 186.4 million tons. This progress has brought clear economic benefits, but it has also exposed structural bottlenecks. The increase in the volume of containers, solid and liquid bulk, has put pressure on the logistics chain. Areas, road access, and urban interfaces, especially in regions where the port and the city share the same physical space. In addition, there were revisions to the polygon during the period, cited as a factor of legal uncertainty. Areas were included and excluded in short intervals, making long-term planning difficult and increasing uncertainty for operators and investors. The current proposal emerges as a response to this scenario. The project is the result of years of studies, with a technical study consolidated in 2024 and submitted for public consultation in 2025. Predictability, territorial coherence, and a legal basis for the future growth of the port. But turning this institutional framework into real capacity depends on a decisive step, the formal process that enables expansion: music. At this moment, the expansion proposal, with the incorporation of 12.6 million square meters to the port, is not materializing in construction sites, but in a decisive administrative process. The proposal to revise the polygon has already gone through a public hearing and a national consultation, conducted by the Ministry of Ports and Airports. In the first half of 2025, with 29 formal contributions analyzed by the National Secretariat of Ports. Once the preliminary analysis was completed, a technical material analysis was returned to the Port Authority of Santos, PS, for consolidation and final adjustments. The pending step is the publication of a ministerial ordinance that formalizes the new boundaries of the organized port. Only after this administrative act does the new polygon become legally valid and can be incorporated into planning instruments. Once it is formalized, the achievement ceases to be conceptual and becomes constructive. With the new polygon, these areas can now receive port and backport works. Today, many of them still face legal and licensing restrictions. Among the first viable structures are large logistical back areas designed to function as operational lungs of the port. These spaces will allow for the construction of truck yards, cargo consolidation and deconsolidation areas, and inspection and sorting centers. Such constructions will reduce direct pressure on urban access points and the immediate surroundings of the terminals. The expansion will also create conditions for the physical enlargement of existing terminals and the development of new specialized terminals. In the case of liquid bulk, for example, regions like the Alamoa neighborhood will be able to accommodate the construction of new tanks, expanded containment basins, pump houses, road platforms, and pipeline branches. Thus, operational units tend to be formed. Solid bulk. The new area allows for planning terminals with deeper yards, longer conveyor belts, and less fragmented layouts. This reduces cross-interference, improves productivity, and decreases the need for complex internal maneuvers, which are currently common in more restricted areas of the port. In the container segment, the territorial expansion makes possible the construction that is currently limited by the lack of space. Terminals with larger yards, a greater number of stacks, wider internal roads, and areas dedicated to the railway become impossible, paving the way for a more efficient integration between the quay, yard, and rail access. Another set of works directly associated with the new boundary is in the structural accesses. The incorporation of new areas allows for the design and construction of additional perimeter roads, dedicated overpasses, grade-separated crossings, and direct connections between terminals and highways. This way, port traffic will be more clearly separated from everyday urban traffic. These road interventions also facilitate the implementation of more rational rail access, with marshalling yards, waiting islands, and internal branches within the terminals. The expansion of railway use depends less on technology and more on continuous physical space, something that the new polygon finally provides. The territorial expansion also supports works directly linked to the development of the access channel. On the competitiveness agenda, there are proposals and studies related to deepening the channel, usually discussed as an evolution of the operational level. But the point here is less about the exact number and more about logic. Capacity, navigation, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand when the port grows. In addition to the large terminals, opportunities arise for support construction, such as warehouses, customs facilities, logistics centers, port maintenance workshops, operational bases, and industrial facilities, light structures aimed at serving the port's logistics chains. These are less visible structures, but crucial for the system's performance. Thus, the expansion of the polygon does not inaugurate a specific project, but unlocks a broad and progressive set of possible constructions. It is this territorial base that will allow the Port of Santos to transform growth into infrastructure in a planned, phased way, compatible with the complexity of Brazil's largest port. When we talk about a 162% expansion of the Port of Santos, the number is indeed impressive. This growth of almost 13 square kilometers alone is equivalent to about 1,760 Federación Internacional de Football Association standard soccer fields. Adding the current area and the incorporated area, the Port of Santos would occupy the equivalent of almost 2,800 soccer fields, distributed among operational areas, back areas, access points, and aquatic zones. In urban terms, it's like suddenly incorporating an entire medium-sized neighborhood, exclusively dedicated to logistics. On the international scene, even with the expansion, Santos does not become a giant port in terms of area. However, it will completely change its status. With approximately 20 km², the Brazilian port would still be well below complexes, like Rotterdam in the Netherlands, which covers around 125 km². but it would stop operating with the typical territorial limitations of ports. Compact urban ports would occupy an intermediate range, more in line with their economic importance. For comparison, the Port of Los Angeles, for example, declares 7,500 acres of area, which converts to approximately 30 km². In other words, even after the expansion, Santos would still be smaller in total area. However, it would already be close in terms of magnitude, something unthinkable with the current boundaries. It's even more evident. The total area of the expanded Port of Santos would be larger than the combined organized areas of several medium-sized Brazilian ports. It's an expansion that allows the Santos complex to operate with logistics similar to those of major international hubs. In practical terms, the expansion of the polygonal area won't turn Santos into Rotterdam, but it prevents it from operating as a port that's too small for the growing volume of cargo it handles. Of Paulista at a territorial level, consistent with its role as the main logistical link between Brazil and international trade. The expansion of the polygonal area creates the conditions for the Port of Santos to grow without repeating the bottlenecks of the past. With more territory under port management, it becomes possible to plan expansions in advance, better distribute the types of cargo, and reduce the overlap between logistical operations and sensitive urban areas. From an economic point of view, the impact is direct. New areas make long-term leases possible, attract private investments in terminals, back areas, and infrastructure, and increase the capacity to serve Brazilian foreign trade. Each new project unlocked represents direct jobs, a supply chain, and increased revenue collection. More than just growing in volume, the Port of Santos is now growing in predictability, something essential for a logistics asset that supports a significant portion of the national economy. The 162% expansion of the Port of Santos is not yet a visible project, but it is a decision. This is a project that redefines boundaries, unlocks construction, and prepares the territory for decades of growth. Before the concrete comes the planning. Before the physical expansion comes the space to make it possible. That's how the largest port in Brazil organizes itself to keep growing. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on the Port of Santos expansion? Do you think it will benefit both the regions and the country's economy, given its international status? Leave your opinion in the comments below. I'll stop here. A big hug and see you in the next video.